Thank you. Bye-bye. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this exciting panel discussion. So let me introduce our two experts in the field, which is Frederic Gerand from the RTBF in Belgium and Olivier Ourandam from AudioMix. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome, everyone. And, to start this panel, this is really important to talk about a key success factor. And the key success factor here in the discussion, it's really the content. Content, it's king, and it's really the way to boost the audience, to engage the listener into another dimension. And today, we need, and this is really important, your goal is to use, not only to produce, but to use an amazing content and to find in different way with independent podcaster or independent web radio, you need to find amazing content to attract a new type of audience. This is really, really important. So, and at the end of the day, you need to find a way to create a wow moment with your listener. And this is really the goal of the discussion. The topic of the day will be how a big radio, a big public radio can use native content to grow his audience within his context, global context. So first of all, I would like to share with you some case studies, and the first case studies we have internally within the group, with the Shoutcast group. We have our own native web radio, which is HotMix, which is a huge platform with more than 200 different stations hosted by Shoutcast. And now we set up a partnership with Nostalgie in Belgium to use our content into their inventory. So they are using a part of our web radio, and they completely customize our web radio into their environment. So we are a native producer, and they use our content to increase their inventory. This is one example to introduce the topic. The second one, in Belgium also, we just launched, and we help the EPM group with DH, which is one of the big sport publishers in Belgium. We produce with native e-sport podcaster. We produce with them a podcast to expand their audience and to go into another world, which is the e-sport world, and they don't have any capacity to produce that podcast, so they use native podcaster and expert about e-sport, and they introduce the podcast in their inventory. And which is great because we create this partnership based on revenue share. They pay nothing about the content. The content was only based on revenue and monetization. So that was very great because they add a new podcast in their portfolio by doing nothing and a very qualitative content. Another example, a great example, you all know TED Talks. They had a partnership with NPR in the US, so they produced together a a podcast and to broadcast the different conferences, and it was really great. So it's a really famous show within the US to really accelerate the native content. So this was very, very great. I don't know if you know this case also. It's really the Audio Lab, the BBC Sounds Audio Lab. So it's really an incubator, and they help independent producer and content creator to develop project like podcast, and then they embedded those content into their platform to help independent producer to grow their content, and it's really a win-win approach strategy between a big publisher and small independent producer. So let's start the panel and the discussion all together. Sorry, we are 3 French speakers doing this in English. It's not that easy, but we are doing our best. Let's talk about the different topics. So, Frederic, how can radio station collaborate with content creator and podcaster to produce high quality, and what RTBF in Belgium is doing in that field?
So we are a public service media, so we don't have the same approach as private companies. And we don't have the same approach as BBC because our market is not so mature as the UK, and we start producing podcasts maybe five years ago. A native podcast 5 years ago, and so the collaboration with the independent producers is made through co-production at the moment. So because we want to keep the control on the editorial line, and at the time it's important for us not to welcome content that we don't have the control on. Okay. We want to control all the process.
So you are not doing your shopping on Spotify to bring nice podcaster and bring them into your brands.
No, we have our own platform that is an audio and video platform, and video takes the biggest place on the platform. And we are starting developing the audio part of the platform, so that's the beginning. So what's the sorry?
So how do you find independent podcaster?
I think we don't search them. They come to us, okay, because we have we publish projects regularly during the year.
Okay, what are the main challenge, the main barrier you are facing with this strategy to produce native content? The platform.
We have the barrier we want to place on our own road, because there is no real barrier. I think if I can give an advice, that don't build 2 separate worlds. Linear world and on-demand world are not 2 separate worlds. That's the same thing. You can build a virtuous cycle between the 2 worlds, because that's we produce native podcast, and we try to most often broadcast them on the air.
Okay.
And as all the traditional radio stations, many clips of the air are available on demand also.
Okay.
Of course.
What's the percentage between native content and replay within RTBF portfolio?
Good question. I would say 20% native content and 80% replay content.
Okay. So Olivier, as the CEO of AudioMeans, what innovative strategy or technology you are using to help a broadcaster like RTBF to boost their podcast strategy and use native content? And can you explain the nature of maybe your partnership with RTBF?
Yes, of course. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm Olivier. I'm the CEO and founder of AudioMeans. At AudioMeans, we develop and commercialize a tech solution. We are a tech company to host, distribute, monetize, and promote on-demand digital audio content across multiple listening environments, like podcast aggregators, of course, but also smart speakers, white label, progressive web apps, web players, and so on. And so our clients are big media brands like RTBF, RTL in France, Energy, who want to distribute their contents on the podcast aggregators, the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so on. And some independent studios or individuals that produce native contents. So we have an eye on both sides, I would say. And it's interesting to see how these worlds can interact together. And I would say something that's different from Frederic. I think there are two different worlds. There are two different worlds because if you produce a content for FM radio, for broadcast, it's very different from producing it for the platforms, the on-demand platforms, because in the broadcasting world, it's a world of scarcity. You just have 24 hours of program every day. And it's a world of instantaneity. The radio is the perfect media for hot news. And the content can be outdated after a few hours or a few days. In the on-demand world, you produce mostly evergreen content because you don't know when they are going to be listened to by the listener. And it's a world of infinite catalog of contents. You have as many content as you want. So you have to think differently when you are a radio and you want to target the on-demand world.
Indeed. You're right. But we don't put of course we edit the clips that come from the radio to have value in the on-demand world because of instantaneity, because of all the things you said. But some of them have a big potential in the on-demand world. They still have value after being broadcasted.
Yeah, I'm sure. There are some. But to continue, the on-demand world and the podcast platforms, it's a marvelous world because it's interoperable. It's based on RSS feed. I don't want to be too technical, but it's important to understand that this is very strong because you just have to publish one RSS feed and you can be on every platforms around the world. But the weakness of this system is that to be so robust, you need to have one show and a list of episodes. So it's very vertical. And for publishers like you, it's not enough flexible to be able to editorialize your channel. So to answer your question, what do we do? For example, we do some solutions to be able to get rid of this verticality of the RSS feed and to be able to mix different episodes coming from different shows in order to have another experience on the listening platform. And for example, when the Queen in England died, it was very easy with our technology to create an RSS feed that would display all the episodes dealing with the subject of the Queen and coming from different shows of a single station. So it gives you this flexibility.
Okay. And today there is a lot of brand content and a lot of brands are creating podcasts. So I know you are a public actor, but how do you, maybe in the future, you can promote those podcasts? And I know, Olivier, you develop a solution to do that also.
I can't answer the question, but we have an example in the public service media world, because Radio Canada has on its own app and platform that it's called Audio. They have branded content. I don't know how, I don't know, but at the moment, at the time, we can't do that on our own platform because of the regulation. That's the law. Maybe I can explore if I could do it on third-party platform and with my partner.
So, because Olivier, you develop a solution to promote brand podcast, or maybe a small podcast to promote into a big show and big podcaster to enable them to grow their audience.
Yes, on the podcast apps. But first of all, I will give you an example of a partnership between a radio station and some native creators. We work with Energy in France. This is a national radio group with three stations. And 3 years ago, they started to produce native content. So they used our solution in order to host and distribute those contents. And while discussing with them, we told them that we had many independent podcasters or studios that wanted to better monetize their content, their podcasts. So we made a deal with Energy Group in order to be able to use the sell house of Energy to monetize the native podcasts that are hosted on Audio Meets. So it's a first bridge between the native world and the broadcast world, the radio world. And then it was interesting because it worked very well. But at one point, Energy told us, I have native content, but my footprint on the apps is not large enough because I produce, but there is so many contents that it's difficult for me to have visibility on my content. And so we suggested them to take some content that we are hosting, to put them on their owned and operated platforms, on their apps and website, in order to enlarge their catalog and to give a good reason for listeners to stay on their sites and on their apps, because they could get more content and they don't have to go to the Spotify or Apple podcast to have this rich catalog. So it was a good collaboration, and it's working very well.
So, Frederic, you can use that technique within RTBF also? Maybe to use other podcaster hosted by...
Not on our own platform.
Okay.
Because of the regulation for the moment.
Okay.
But as I said before, we could imagine doing it on third-party platform, because I guess it could bring more visibility to independent podcaster to be inside our own inventory. Maybe, I don't know. Well, I think we have to think about that.
Okay. So, just Olivier, can you explain your...
to comment the slide that is on the screen. So at AudioMeans, we have developed a solution to be able to promote new podcast, so mostly branded podcast, within the apps, within the aggregators. I give this example of a radio show from RTL in France, Entrée dans l'histoire, because in France, and I believe it's the same in most European markets, the radio shows are the most downloaded on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. They are very powerful. If I can give you an example, in France, the most downloaded podcast in the apps is Les Grosses Têtes. It's a daily entertainment show from RTL France, and it's 17 to 18 million downloads per month. And if you compare it to the best, to the highest ranked native podcast, it's more than 10 times the number of downloads. So you have radio shows that are very, very powerful in the apps. They have many followers, they have many downloads. So our idea was, how can we use this power to give visibility and to promote native content, especially branded content. And as we are expert in the RSS feed, we developed a solution that is called CrossPod to be able to dynamically insert some episodes, one single or a few episodes of a podcast that you want to promote within the list of episodes of a powerful podcast. So, for example, here you have the second position of the list of the episodes of Entrée dans l'Histoire. It's not actually an episode of Entrée dans l'Histoire, it's an episode that is recommended by Entrée dans l'Histoire, and that is a native content. That's Nego le podcast. It's a native content. And so the listener, when he goes to the show page Entrée dans l'Histoire on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, on Castbox, on Google Podcast, he can see this sponsored link, and he can directly listen to the content, to the promoted content, within the context of Entrée dans l'Histoire, but the listen will be attributed to the promoted content, so it gives some strength to the promoted content. And then we add, you can see on top of the description, in purple, there is a call to action, a click-through link that make it possible for the listener to go and directly to the show page of the promoted podcast. And in most apps, we are also able to have a deep link to follow directly the promoted content. So that's a way to use the power of a big show, especially a radio show, to promote, give visibility, and generate downloads for a show that has not such a power.
We at RTBF we don't use this functionality yet, because you release it maybe one week ago or 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and I was not aware. And I'm sure it will be really powerful, because we know by many studies on many markets that the recommendation through a show, a podcast, and through the platform is one of the most powerful.
What is your famous native podcast at the RTBF, the most successful podcast at the RTBF for the moment?
I think I would need maybe help from my team, but I would say the newest native podcast we published and we produced is called Les Tueurs du Brabant. That's a true crime. Mm. That's our. I think I could say that's our first real true crime at RTBF, and that's a real big success.
Okay, great. So for those who have never used native content into their radio, what will be your recommendation to start this process, and what will be your tips for them?
I would say that you don't have to, when you think about producing content, you don't think about don't say it will be a podcast or it will be a radio show, or it will be, I don't know, a video. Think about the editorial concept, and then think where it will be more attractive, or where will be reach more people. And so from the beginning, you know what you have to produce, and it's an economical reason, but also I think it is interesting through an editorial perspective regarding the audio world. Every time we think about native audio content, we think about the way to broadcast on the air. Okay. And when we produce a radio show, from the beginning, we deeply think about what which clips will be used on the on-demand, which clips are the more value in the on-demand world.
Okay, perfect. And Olivier, you see a lot of native content and a lot of podcast producer on your platform. What is your tips and recommendation for a radio for a radio company?
Tips, it's difficult to say, but I would say it's important to have young people in the team because we know that the youngest don't listen to broadcast radio as much as we would like. And it's important to understand how they listen to audio content on the platforms. And I think what is very important to understand when I talk to broadcasters, that's always something we discuss, that's the importance of the artwork. This is something that is not obvious for people from the radio channels because they just produce content to be listened to, but on the apps, the covers and the artworks are very important because there is a lack of searchability in those apps. So if you want to be seen, you need to have a very specific artworks, and sometimes there is not enough focus on that in the radio teams.
Indeed, and I would add that the description of the content is totally different from the linear world, and maybe the one of the highest stack is converting our team from producing flow content. And then now stock content for stock. That's a different approach, and our goal is to train them to be able to do that.
Great. So as a Shoutcast and is a part of the Azerion group, we and Azerion is really they have in their own DNA. The content production, we decide to launch our own podcast factory, so we are able to support publisher and in partnership also with Olivier to host their podcast. But we are able to produce, share, scale, and monetize the podcast. So this is really important in also to share with you. We are able to produce content for you and also also create station, web radio, also for you. This is really, really important. So maybe some question in the attendance. For Olivier, for Frederic. No question? Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe one question. Okay.
Thank you. Is it working? Yes. I know ATBF has its own app, and I wanted to ask, what's your strategy to make sure that the listeners from Spotify and Apple Podcasts go to your own app? Like, what's the play there?
That's a good question. The strategy we built 1 year ago is to give an exclusivity to our own platform. Regarding the native content, we have a 1 month exclusivity for Ovio. Ovio is our own platform. And then we distribute, thanks to the partnership with AudioMints, we distribute the native podcast onto the third-party platform. And regarding the replay content, we distribute them at the same time on our own platform and towards the third-party platform. But the catalog, the inventory on the third-party platform is smaller than on our own platform. For the moment, we don't know how to measure the success, because we are searching for a partner, and I think I know that one of our partners called Voxelize could help us to measure the success, the lever we try to have between the for an example, when we publish a native content, we make a trailer. We publish a trailer on Spotify or Apple Podcast to announce that the show is already available on our own platform, and it will be available on that platform within 1 month. But we are completely unable to measure the effect of that. So we would like to know what if it is successful or not.
Okay, we're nearly out of time. We probably have 1 minute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying that the catalog of content is more reduced on the third-party platform. Like, how do you go about limiting that? Do you simply not publish them, or what's the solution there?
That's because we thanks to AudioMints, you can limit the life of the content on the third-party platform, and one of the things that we decide we decide to work with AudioMints for many reasons, but one of them was to be able to decide on to design, to customize the relation with each third-party platform. So if tomorrow we are in trouble with Spotify, for example, we can stop distributing on them, but continue on distributing on Apple Podcast and all the other aggregators.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Big round of applause, please, for Shoutcast and for our amazing speakers. There's a 30-minute coffee break now, so enjoy some coffee and some cakes, and back here for Radio Player for a session in a half an hour.